In this lecture on compiler construction, we'll conclude our discussion on static analysis and optimization from the previous 3 lectures. And today we're going to have a look at very busy expressions, and we're going to summarize this chapter by looking at common properties of data flow analysis. So it's very busy expressions today, and from this we can take a closer look and summarizing it on so-called May and must analysis, and then sum up common features and a categorization of different analysis approaches we've seen before. So today's topic is busy expressions, and we say that as a given expression E is busy, so we call it busy at a program point, if and only if 2 conditions hold. So the first condition is that an evaluation of E exists along some path Wi to Wj of program points, which starts at that program point Wi. So at least one path starting at Wi, we have an evaluation of the expression. The other thing that has to hold is that no operation of any operand of our expression E exists before its evaluation along that path. So we have to ensure that the operands of this expression are unchanged. We've seen this before. So of course, if the operands are changed, we know that's essentially a different expression we are evaluating. And if we find out that an expression is busy at some program point, we know that it's definitely going to be used in at least some path following that program point we're looking at. Now, busy expressions in itself are useful as a building block for defining, a prerequisite for optimizing based on busy expressions, and that's what we call very busy expressions. So an expression is very busy at some program point if it will be definitely evaluated before its value changes. So at a program point Wi we're looking at, an expression is called very busy if it's busy along all of the passes starting at this program point Wi. So our methods for data flow analysis can approximate the set of very busy expressions for all program points, and we can use this for optimizations. So the optimization that can be used based on this static analysis is called code hoisting, and this is a bit of a different optimization compared to what you've seen before. So code hoisting means that we can move the computation of a very busy expression to the earliest point where it is busy. So essentially we can move the code implementing or executing this expression around and to an earlier place, and at this place we can calculate it and we know we can use it results. So this optimization isn't necessarily reducing execution time, so it's not in all cases a performance optimization. It can be, but it reduces code space, and this optimization can be very useful for use in small-scale embedded systems where the amount of flash space in read-only memory is very limited, so you need to ensure that the size of your code is actually as small as possible and you don't care as much about the performance of your code. So most modern compilers implement things like size-based optimizations. For example, in GCC and Clang, you can enable this with an optimization switch -OS for size-based optimization instead of -O, 1, 2, 3, and so on for mostly performance-based optimizations. So here we have an example for busy expressions. So B plus C is not very busy at the loop entrance here, because in this example here we have a calculation of B plus C, but for very busy expressions we need to ensure that this expression B plus C is actually evaluated in all of the passes starting from this location in our program. So of course if we go here, that is some arbitrary expression executing an if, so it switches control flow between the left and the right hand side depending on some condition. So if we go to the left here, we calculate A equals B plus C, so essentially our expression is busy, and then our control flows converge again. But if we go to the other side here, so we start again here, go to the right, we calculate something different like D plus C, so our expression is not busy here. So even if we enter the loop again and we can always take the right path. So essentially our expression is not very busy here. So take a look at the similar example on the right hand side. So here again we evaluate b plus c before the beginning of the loop, and then inside of the loop for each iteration we check if a is greater than b plus c, and if it's greater then we set variable x to 1, otherwise we set x to 0. That's not relevant here. So essentially for each iteration in the loop, no matter how many times we go through here, every time we have to evaluate b plus c. So this expression is always busy in all of the passes starting from here. So b plus c here is a very busy expression. And if b plus c isn't changed, we can do some optimizations, as we'll see in a minute. So code hoisting optimizations have a bit of a problem because we can't do extremely precise analysis here. So data flow analysis can approximate the set of very busy expressions for all program points. If we know that an expression is found to be very busy at a program point wi, we can move its evaluation to that node. The result of that analysis can then be used to perform code hoisting. We've seen this is a space-saving optimization, and code hoisting itself means that we move the computation of that very busy expression. It's very busy, so we execute it every time. So we want to execute it, well, not that many times. So this computation of the very busy expression can be performed at the earliest point. So we're moving this expression around. And this is useful for another optimization, which then might save, yes, execution time again, which is loop invariant code motion. So if we have an expression inside of a loop that is not changed inside of loop, but yes, like our if expression in our previous example, in our previous slide, is executed maybe thousands or millions of times, it's very useful to calculate it before we get into the loop, so we don't have to repeat its evaluation. And if we know this expression is invariant and is very busy, we know it must be used in the future, so it's worthwhile to evaluate this expression outside of our loop. So here we have an example. So this is our if example from 2 slides ago. So we know a is greater than b plus c is evaluated here as our if condition, and we're not changing b plus c anywhere in our code inside of the loop. So essentially, well, it's pretty obvious. We could evaluate b plus c once. We did it before already, so we know it's a very busy expression. And we can use this result we've calculated here before instead of re-evaluating b plus c every time we go through our loop here. And that's exactly what we do here. So we can actually change our code to evaluate b plus c only once. We've did this, so we assign this to a temporary variable t, and we can use this variable t to replace our evaluation of b plus c. So essentially it's not doing the addition every time through the loop like here, but just reading our variable and doing the comparison here. And of course, we again have flow equations for our very busy expressions. So we can define our out and in sets. So our out sets are the cut of all the successing program points p of our program point n we're looking at, of their insets. So again, what are we generating, what is used in successing blocks, or the empty set if it's the final block, and our inset is the outset minus the kill set joined with the generating set. So here again we have an example. So we have an if expression again, a is greater than b in block 1. If yes, we calculate x equals b minus a and y equals a minus b. And if it's false, we do it the other way around. We calculate y equals b minus a and x equals a minus b. So here we can generate kill and gen sets here. So our kill sets are the empty set. Our gen sets are the empty set for a is greater than b, just because we're not calculating any result that we're assigning somewhere. And then we generate b minus a here a minus b here. So in blocks 2 and 3 we have these results. And the other way around, in block 4 we have b minus a generated. In block 5 we have a minus b generated. So we can now start doing our iterative approach to calculate the in and out sets for our analysis. So we know in 1 equals out 1. So now we can go down here and say in 2 equals out 2 joined with b minus a, which is exactly what's being generated here. We can do in 3 equals a minus b. So in 4 equals joining a minus b with b minus a. So in 5 is then a minus b, and from that we can calculate the outsets, and we finally arrive at our analysis result here, giving us in and outsets for our example. Now, if you look at all these static analysis we've considered before, maybe you've seen a common analysis pattern. And this common pattern is shown on this slide here. So essentially, we color-coded it. So something blue of the current block we're looking at, or the current program point n, equals something red of that block n minus kill n joined with gen n. And something red equals some operator here of some sets, and those go over n dash, and this n dash is part of a set related to n. Now that's very, very unspecific. So essentially the red and blue boxes here always refer to an in or out set. So either the in set here is generated using the outset minus kill joined with a gen set, or the other way around. The outset is generated as the inset minus kill joined with gen. And then exactly the other one. So if we have in here, we have out down here, or the other way around. It's generated as the join or cut of the other set using the pred or suc, so the predecessing or the succeeding program points here. So we have two choices. So are we performing a forward or backward analysis here? And does the analysis compute the join or the cut sets here? And this, if you take a look through our previous slide sets, is a common feature of all the analysis we've seen before. So essentially this is the basis for all of these simple analysis, which can essentially be computed by the same piece of code. Now, we've also seen that we have some analysis where we are computing some facts that may take place. So an analysis that has some facts that hold along some path in the control flow graph. And we have other analysis that compute must facts, so facts that have to hold along all the paths. So, of course, we have an equivalence in our data flow equations here. So if we are using the join operation, this is a may analysis, so at least one of those must hold to give a result. That's not empty. And if we use the cut operation, we know that at least one part of each of the previous or succeeding data flow facts must be present to give a result. So the cut operation is generating a must analysis that joins paths together. So from this we can now build a category table of our data flow analysis, so of our simple data flow analysis, according to the equations used. So we have forward and backward analysis to choose from, and we have may and must analysis. And if we do a forward analysis with a may requirement, we have reaching definitions. If we have a forward analysis with must requirements, we have our available expressions analysis. If we have a backward analysis with may, we get our live variables analysis. And finally, if we have a backward analysis with must, we have very busy expressions. So this concludes our quick discussion on static analysis and a bit on optimizations. There's much more to tell about this, but not in this introductory compilers course. This would definitely lead too far, but I hope I could give you an insight here about what techniques compilers used to analyze properties and how they can be used to implement optimizations.